Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope you're well, and I will get right to my prepared text. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, by the way. Howard Terminal Oakland update: combating Howard Terminal financial misinformation. The Howard Terminal Oakland Ballpark project has been the focus of not a little misinformation, most of it surrounding the subject of money, otherwise known as financing. Let me present, then correct the misinformation statements that have dominated the conversation. First, there's the constant refrain that Howard Terminal Ballpark project will use bonds floated by the City of Oakland. Bonds issued by the City of Oakland are such that they rely on access to the City of Oakland General Fund in case the revenue source used to pay the bonds runs out. Well, the fact is, the Howard Terminal Oakland project was slated to be within what is called an Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, or EIFD. How many times have you heard me talk about that over the years? By California law, bonds for an Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District are floated by an organization called the Public Financing Authority, which is supposed to be set up by the City of Oakland as a standalone entity. More to a detailed point, the city actually is to have a type of legislation, council level, that transfers its ability to backstop to the district and says, hey, district, you can backstop your bonds, but the city isn't supposed to backstop the bonds. That's the way the law is written. Okay? That's the way the law is written. And there are a number of ways to make that work. For example, you could structure the project in such a way that it's actually owned by a limited liability corporation, which consists of the city, the public financing authority, and the developer, and the bank, and the underwriter. So if the project bonds happen to not get the revenue needed from the tax increment financing source, which, given the nature of that source, is highly unlikely, then guess who gets to take it over? Yeah, the underwriter and the LLC. Okay. So the underwriter says, hey, you know what? Okay, we're part of this, but you owe us. So this whole deed turns over to our control. That can be done. And the point that I'm making is that a lot of people who look at this believe, and it's presented as if it's one size fits all. That is, it's like going to Sears. I need to go to aisle 5 and shelf 8 to get my tax increment financing kit, which has my organization, which has my staff. Everything is pre-made, everything is pre-priced. No. In point of fact, these deals are just that. They're deals. They're custom. So where one approach may have the city as a backstop, another does not. Where one bond issue may be a limited obligation bond, which I don't recommend, another is not. Another is a true enhanced infrastructure financing district bond. Deals are tools. Remember the saying that USS Enterprise Engineer Montgomery Scott would always utter, the right tool for the right job? That's what this is really all about. It's about building the right tool, the right deal for the job of establishing the financing that fits the revenue generating abilities of the particular project. That's what's not understood here by lay people. All these are custom made. They're custom made. All right. So by California law, bonds are floated again, as I said, by the Public Financing Authority. That's supposed to be set up by the City of Oakland, okay, as a standalone entity. SB 628 Beal is the first legislation to establish the California Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District Law. SB 628, signed into law by California Governor Jerry Brown in 2015, states that the Public Financing Authority issues the bonds. In October of 2019, the state of California passed AB 116 so that there is no voter approval required for bonds to be issued by the Public Financing Authority. Also, the Public Financing Authority issues bonds based on an infrastructure financing district plan as of this writing. And we're approaching 2023. Oakland, which has had 3 years to write the infrastructure financing district plan since SB 293 Skinner, the Howard Terminal version of SB 628, was signed into law by Governor Newsom October 11th of 2019, but has still not done so. The City of Oakland and the County of Alameda must validate the Public Financing Authority's ability to use tax increment financing separate from the City of Oakland. That is the key move to separate the city's financing responsibilities from the Howard Terminal Public Financing Authority. Again, there is no public financing authority right now, but there will be, and the mayor of Oakland has said so to me personally, Libby Schaff. I know we have the mayor-elect. The fact is, the establishment of it and the Public Infrastructure Financing District Plan will take another year at this point. That's what we're looking at, okay? Now, I want to talk about something else that was introduced on Twitter and by my friend Michael Colbruno, and it is the city's, if you will, answer to the public the Pacific Maritime Shipping Association's, if you will, critique of Howard Terminal. I think it's a fair way to put it. And my friend Mike getting his Twitter account, Michael Colbruno, put out this tweet. Okay. Right here, I'm going to go to StreamYard and I'm going to port it over. Share screen here. And there. Like that. Okay. And now let me zoom in on what Michael wrote. Okay. Here. Here. Whoops. And let me try this one more time. Here. Okay. And he says, recommended reading City's Comprehensive Report on Economic Impacts. I don't know if you can see this or not. See that? All right. Recommended reading City's Comprehensive Report on Economic Impacts of Oakland Athletic Stadium. Opponent's argument shot down as erroneous, inaccurate, and overstated. Well, and then he tags Carol Fife, Noel Gallo, Dan Cobb, Lauren Taylor, and our mayor-elect, okay? Well, okay. I took a look at that recommended reading, as he put it, and I have to say that as I pull up my version of it, it was, and I'll put it in the report area here, okay? And then I'll switch it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, go back over down here. Stop screen, hit, and then share screen again, and hit view report, and voila, there that is. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in a bit more on it, like so, and then move it over. This is from Betsy Lake. Now, let me go through this and make it very easy for you. All right. There's something that you need to realize. When you're writing reports regarding development and legislation that impacts that development, like enhanced infrastructure financing district law, you don't shorthand it. In other words, you refer to it as EIFD. Okay? Like that. Why? Because it's called Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. That's it. Why enhanced? Because it uses the power of tax increment financing to generate a gigantic level of revenue to finance and help not just pay for infrastructure, but, and this is more important, provide the community's desired benefits. Did you hear what I said? That's in accordance with SB 293 Skinner, okay? Now, what I'm about to do has to be understood, because what I'm doing is I'm discussing how the project should be done and described. Others, like reporters covering it, are try to describe the project as they're doing it. They're doing it incorrectly. Now you would say, why do I say that so cavalierly? Well, a big problem is that when you go through this study, when you go through this report that Ms. Lake wrote, here, let me get rid of that, okay? What you find is a constant reference, not to EIFD, all right? But Industrial Financing District, okay? Here, look at this. EIFD financing for on-site infrastructure. IFD is just what she writes. It's supposed to be EIFD. Okay. All right. Okay. Now she says an IFD has never been considered as a method to finance or subsidize. And she's okay. So that's right. But she doesn't discuss the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. Okay. So the problem is that she goes through here and in an attempt, she says to explain economic impact, she's not doing that. She's cherry picking the Pacific Maritime Study. And in so doing, she's stumbling all over herself. What she's doing is she's saying, okay, here's what's wrong with what they wrote, but she's not explaining how the project works. And so when she uses the term IFD to say, hey, look, we're not going to do that. But the question is, what are you going to do? All right. So let's continue. Let's continue. You should be very careful to make sure you explain what you're going to do first, and then and go from there, because that's an economic impact report. This isn't that. So Michael Combruno thinks he's showing an economic impact report. That's what he said. Okay. That's what he wrote on his tweet. Okay. He wrote recommended reading, comprehensive report on economic impacts of Oakland Athletic Stadium. That's not what this starts off to be. Okay. That is not what this starts off to be. So there's a lot of terms in here that are just thrown around incorrectly. IFD is presented, but only to tell you, well, we're not going to use that. You're really supposed to be discussing your project, which is Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. But guess what? The city hasn't formed that. So what's this really all about? So if at this point you're saying, I'm confused, that's precisely my point. Because this is a document meant to be political. Like the majority of documents have been written regarding Howard Terminal for public consumption by the City of Oakland. It's for the moment. It doesn't discuss where the project is at or where it's going. All right. Now, I would love to see the rest of that in this document, but you know what? If I go back through this document forward, like so, let's go all the way down. All right. Let's go here. All right. It deals with key questions regarding the PMSA report, and that's it. This is not an economic impact analysis. All right. This is not an economic impact analysis. This is a response to Waterfront Ballpark District study prepared by PMSA. This is not an economic impact analysis, Michael. This is not that. This is not a proper description of the project. Okay. This is not that. So, for example, you would be forgiven for reaching to this point at page 11, where it says the PSA report concludes with a series of key questions. How can the city reasonably determine the revenue benefits of the project? All right. With details, when details are unavailable, will a detailed 45-year financial forecast be calculated, like my spreadsheet, before the city negotiates a project development agreement? And then she writes, as the PSA report notes, negotiations with the developer are ongoing, and not all information is in the public domain. Folks, let me tell you something. The information that is not in the public domain is the actual tax increment calculation that they're using, according to one council member who I talked to. When I told that council member, in fact, that thinks that actually Lauren Taylor and I had the discussion in public, and I said, Lauren, that kind of information should not be held from the public, and I'll tell you why. Because you're ultimately concerning tax money. That's public money within a framework of Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District legislation that says, all right, you form the public financing authority and the infrastructure financing plan. Within that infrastructure financing plan should be a list detailed of pegged projects that are deemed of community-wide significance. Those projects could be the entire list or most of that was created by the Howard Terminal Waterfront Coalition and the other community groups that formed to make that plan, and who wondered what happened to all their work. So with presentations like the one Ms. Lake gives attacking what the PMSA wrote, it's as if all of that was just poured right down the drain. This is not the first time. Okay? Not the first time. And then she refers to, in her presentation here, all right, she refers to another report that I have torn up, and literally, and it's Century Urban, okay? It's right here, okay? And it reads, Professor Aga's analysis, talking about the Noah Aga who was hired by PMSA, relies on assumptions about a hypothetical deal informed by various public documents, and then she refers to Century Urban, okay? And she says she wants to clarify and correct assumptions. Here's the problem. It's not Professor, even though I agree that Professor Aga's report was sloppy, because she doesn't understand redevelopment law. The fact of the matter is, and she doesn't understand, well, I'm not going to get into that. It's nothing personal against her. But Century Urban did a lousy job in calculating tax increment revenue. Why? Because what they did was they established a straw person year of 2020 here, okay, in their report to start their tax increment. Now it's supposed to go 45 years into the future, which would place it to what, 2065. They didn't even do that. They stopped it, get this, 25 years in the future. That's it. Okay? You heard me. They left 20 years on the table, and no one recognized it. This is something that I pointed to before, and I've said again and again and again. They left money on the table. Now, I don't know why Ms. Legg refers to it. It's scary that she does. Because then there's a new set of questions. Okay, if Lauren is 100% correct and the proprietary numbers, the unseen ones, are closer to the ones that I have, which is what he told me, then it's actual 45 years, and it's supposed to start at a hypothetical year in the future. You don't go back. You don't do that. The reason you don't do this, the reason why you do not start with a straw person, this is what Century Urban did, is because it makes your thinking about the project and its timing off. For example, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. You and I both know, if you know this project, that 45 years is the bond issue period, right? You also know that the athletics lease is up after 2024. We're heading in 2023, right? So ideally, you have to pick a ballpark, pun intended, when the ballpark construction is going to start. So you would think that you would like it to be just before the athletics lease is up, like next year. So they should pick 2023. But then if you say, hey, wait a minute, they're not ready to do anything. So then you start thinking about it. You say, all right, what's my tax increment growth going to look like? I will tell you that if you assume $2 billion of base year assessed value and you're not going to take the taxing agency's money from that over 4% rate of growth per year over a 45-year period, you're looking at year one, $860,000. Not a lot for bond. But if you were to use the taxing agency amount, that would then jump to $20,860,000. It's a big difference. And you can float a much larger bond faster rather than, let's say, they say waiting. All right. So that it begs the other question. How long is the wait period? The wait period is generally sized until you reach an average throw off of revenue that for a bond of the type that's needed comes to around 4 million a year or thereabouts. So you say, what's my pay go? What can I, how many years in the future, how many years should I start off before I want to float a bond? Well, right now, that looks like 4 years. So what does that mean that we do? And this really should come into your economic enhanced infrastructure financing district tax increment financing revenue calculation economic model. All right. I say economic, I mean the revenue. I don't mean anything else. Just the revenue. Okay. You say we need to form the district now. The council needs to approve it. We need to size it up and prove it now or next year, and then give it 4 years to grow. All right. But then you say this, we need to build something on that within 2. Okay. Because what you want is you're saying, okay, the next question is, how big does my initial assessed value have to be in order for me to get a targeted desired rate or monies of $1.6 billion? And I can divide that in half and say that's my bond issue with 800 million, right? That's $2 billion. So even if you're saying the stadium, and see, this is where the process leads you to think about different aspects of the project, right? You say, okay, the stadium, the ballpark is privately financed. If the ballpark is privately financed, then guess what? The A's have to pay that property tax. It should not be abated. And so the A's agree to pay that 1%, and that starts the engine of tax increment financing, which then for their ballpark and for the adjacent facilities, we assume that they're all privately financed, all privately owned. That gives you what your base year is going to look like by the time it goes on, which is year 4. So you're letting the assessed value grow, but you're building something upfront. Why? Because you know that without building that, your base of tax increment financing district revenue is not going to be large enough to justify the debt service on the bond issue that you want to float. That's why. This is something that I learned to do way back in 1987 when I was hired by the City of Oakland as an intern out of Cal. This was the fault of Ezra Rapport. Rest in peace. Okay. But then what we were always discussing, and this came into not just what became the Emeryville, Best Buy, and developments in that area, but also the Coliseum redevelopment area, which I worked on the Coliseum redevelopment survey area report. All right. The base level says, hey, how much tax increment revenue are we going to expect from this project of roughly 6,600 acres and so on? All right. That's a simple way of putting it. But then you start to you sweat because you play the game of thinking about what others call the map a different way. I don't think about the map as a map. I think about the area as assessed value. Where does assessed value have to be? The map could be of various sizes. You can have look, the map itself right now I'm looking at is the 30 to 55 acres. There were some who wanted to make it bigger. But if you think the way that I think about it, you're not thinking, I'm going to grab all of this acreage around me. I'm going to catalyze the building of a set amount of privately financed construction to go online my base year. That means I can stick with the 55 acres. I don't have to worry about landowners around me crying and yelling at the city. And I can reasonably target my TIF revenue and forecast it. You see, this whole game is one of mathematical forecasting. That's what a lot of people don't understand. And a lot of consultants don't want to really touch it in the California parlance. Others do around the country. But the Kaiser Marstons of the world and others, they want to really, in Century Urban, they want to keep it simple. Their thought is they don't want to get sued. Okay? That's their first thought. So they're going to produce an analysis that doesn't give you the true revenue throw off from the project. Why? Because they're not telling you, hey, look, they're not the economic development people. They're just the math people. All right. They're telling you that the project will grow at a projected rate, say 4%. And then they're telling you that we're going to build, let's say, 12 billion in new development. But what they're not telling you in their revenue spreadsheet is how that revenue is going to change. You get to one level, and then it becomes increased by the assessed value rate of growth assumption. Some of the calculations I've seen were without that. Century Urban's calculations that I saw were without that. They were done incorrectly. There is a standard way of doing it we established decades ago. Again, there's a standard way of doing it that we established decades ago. But now, post redevelopment, you have a lot of consultants who are risk averse. And you have cities that are quite literally given up their economic development activities, in many cases, to those consultants. It wasn't always like that. We did things in-house, okay? I was expected to learn how to do these calculations in-house. When I say in-house, I mean inside the walls of the Oakland Redevelopment Agency. I wasn't expected to call a consultant and say, hey, can you do this for me? No. That was on me. The city of Oakland has nobody around who is the equivalent of what I'd done in-house. They have an outside consultant, and those consultants play by their own rules. And since the city is paid by the A's, then the consultant is paid by the A's. And so you really are paying by the A's rules. Okay. So where we've become disconnected is there's no obvious war room planning. Okay. There's no obvious war room planning where I've got economic development officer over here, redevelopment taxing and financing specialist here, city planner over here. And we're quite literally planning all this out on a timeline of realistic expectations and plans to get there, including such minutia as city council dates, votes, when drawings are supposed to be ready. That's what the public should see, a huge timeline. That should be your planning document. That should be your master planning document so that everyone can see where we're at. They don't have that. And then if they say, well, it's proprietary, it shouldn't be. Indeed, I think the Ethics Commission should look at this. That's how screwed up this is. They can't get away with confusing this and making it confusing. And because they made it confusing, they can say, well, and because there are things they don't understand, well, it's proprietary. Do you know how long this doggone thing has taken? It should have been done by now. But they fooled you into thinking that it's so complex that they have to make it has to be held in their hand, and they don't want to let it go, and they don't want the public to see anything. What they don't want the public to see is how they screwed it up, because they don't have confidence in what they're doing. The mayor said that to me in my interview some time ago. Well, 2021, okay? And it's sad and unfortunate, but she did say that. Libby did. She said that the city did not have the right expertise. And she said, we used to do redevelopment. Okay. And she said, we haven't done it in a while. So we're essentially, I'm paraphrasing what Libby said, we're relearning how to do this, relearning. Well, okay, but that is unfortunate. Okay. And to say the least. Okay. This was, let's see here. Here it is. I'm calling up my interview with her. I'm going to present it right there for you so I can find that part of what was said. I'm going to stop the screen here. Go to share screen and go grab my Libby interview, which is here. There. All right. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to take, so I can see this better, I'm going to put me here, right there. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to find that particular area. Hey, everybody. So let me put this there and then grab where I was talking with Libby there. And here, okay. This is when everything was new. This is what, here is Libby, right here. Okay, talking about
in combination with a community financing district.
Let me start here, right here.
Website that should help explain. Personally, have been engaged in negotiations with the A's as recently as yesterday. So yes, we have been in constant negotiation with the A's. And based on those negotiations, based on our shared values and vision, we believe the A's can and should accept the terms that the city council approved today.
Of course they didn't.
This is a non-binding agreement. We respect the A's desire to get to a binding development agreement as quickly as possible. And so this sets the framework. And of course, it was preceded by a lengthy workshop on July 8th. That also explained a lot of the background information. I also suggest everyone goes to the FAQ section on the City of Oakland's website.
Okay, so we got to that, and then I think we're at Q&A. Here I am, right. I believe here's where I started to chime in right here, right there.
Those were, I would say, the two largest distinctions between Friday's version and what got passed today.
And Zenny, let's go back to you.
Yeah, sure. Hey, thank you very much. On my show, the A's president said that he was actually open to having a development partner involved, and that he would accept actually changing from the enhanced infrastructure approach to, for example, the Community Revitalization and Investment Authority Act, which actually is more like the old redevelopment system we used to have, right? And it has actually a better requirement for affordable housing, which might be more to what you would like. Have you had those conversations with the A's president? Are you also open to, since nothing really much has been done since SB 293 Skinner, in terms of negotiating with, for example, the County of Alameda, who would be able to move forward in a way that's mutually beneficial?
Zenny, those issues have not come up in my negotiations or discussions with the Oakland A's. To date, the primary tax increment financing vehicle has been an enhanced infrastructure financing district. But of course, we're always open to other suggestions and to explore other tools that might help us reach our mutual goals. I see a question from Dan to be more specific about the differences on affordable housing.
Okay, let me come back to, I think, let's see here. There was another place where she and I had an exchange. There, I believe it is here. Right there.
Zenny, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Yeah, Ms. Mayor, when he was head
And I gotta thank Libby for allowing me to ask these questions.
of Giants Enterprises, my friend Pat Gallagher was fond of reminding me and everybody else that Packpell Park, as we used to call it, was a large-scale event center, more than a ballpark. When I headed the sports commission for Oakland, I put together a list of 220 sports events that Oakland could go after for many facilities. To that end, have the athletics presented you, or the city presented your staff, with a list of possible events beyond baseball that could be hosted at this large-scale event center that Oakland really does need. Thank you.
Now, first, I want to say something. This wasn't what I was looking for, but this also demonstrates part of the problem where Libby comes in. Libby doesn't understand at all that sports, like facilities like a ballpark, are year-round in their operation and sell out their space. And so her response was, to me, unfortunate.
It's my understanding that the A's proposal does include an event venue.
Okay, see? She misunderstood that. She said it's her understanding that the A's proposal includes an event venue. She didn't listen to what I was saying, because if she had, she would have said, we don't know the event count, because the number of events points to additional economic impact. People hired, working, income, spending, and so on. But by her own admission, they paid no attention to that. By her own omission of discussion of that, they paid no attention to that. I tried to help her out by correcting her.
And I do want to clarify, in the amendments that were read on the floor today, there actually was a clarification that the relocation agreement, the 25-year term, would start at the first home game played in the new stadium.
A clarification real quick, Ms. Mayor, if possible. Clarification real quick, Ms. Mayor. I'm talking about at the facility itself, because the facility, as is true for many ballparks in the United States, holds many different events, including conventions. Have the athletics or the city, and this is not the event center, have the athletics or the city broke that out for you in the way that the Giants did with Giants Enterprises and many other organizations have in terms of facility mismanagement. Thanks.
Zenny, at this point in the process and in our non-binding term sheet agreements, we've been very focused on the financing sources, and that type of detail is not one that I'm familiar with at this time. Although,
And see, that's a big error, because that gets to the function of a ballpark. Okay, that's a big fat error, and it still exists today. Okay, now let me go back to our first exchange, which had to do with the matter of, here it is. I'm finding it. Okay, right here. Okay, all right. Right here. And again, I really appreciate that Libby gave me the time to ask these. I'm just trying to get this damn thing right, folks, because it's so hinky. Okay, and it has been for some time. And I'm the one who came up with the idea of using tax increment financing in the first place. So I feel a great deal of responsibility to make the city get this right. All right.
realizing this incredible vision that we hold for a waterfront ballpark district. With that, I'm happy to take any questions specifically about what the council approved today and the next steps. I think, Justin, if you want to direct traffic, as well as request people to, I think, put their names in the chat or use the hand raise function.
Zenny was first to the quick, so we'll go ahead, Zenny.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, how are you doing,
Hey,
Zenny?
great. How are you all doing? Great to see you all. Hey, Libby, how you doing? Hey,
Good,
quick question. two questions. First of all, a number of us are concerned. I say us, myself, not just Dave Caval, but also Mike Jacob of the Longshoremen, are concerned about the process that introduced this resolution seemingly at the last minute. And in my 33 years, in various views of this, from mayor's aide to intern, all that other stuff, you get buy-in from the developer and the people that you're working with, regardless of the size that they're on. Did anybody stop and say, hey, we need to contact the A's and the others to say this is what we're going to do before we did it? Thanks. Oh, and by the way, that's the first question. The second question has to do with a really nagging tax increment financing issue. The council doesn't understand that we don't have a full 45-year tax increment read with an explanation of the bond issue, the debt coverage ratios, and then that could frame and should frame your conversation with the athletics and the community. There's enough to help the community, but that's not happening. And the numbers that are there by that San Francisco consultant, they made gigantic errors. So there's a number of errors here that really need to be straightened out. I'm asking, are you open to straightening those out? And can you explain the resolution issue? Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Appreciate you.
Sure. I want to say that, remember, we are at a particular moment in this process. The A's put out their proposed term sheet back in April, late April. We have been in constant negotiations with them since that time. We did produce a formal counter proposal, and I personally have been engaged in negotiations with the A's as recently as yesterday. So yes, we have been in constant negotiation with the A's. And based on those negotiations, based on our shared values and vision, we believe the A's can and should accept the terms that the City Council approved today. This is a non-binding agreement. We respect the A's desire to get to a binding development agreement as quickly as possible. And so this sets the framework. And of course, it was preceded by a lengthy workshop on July 8th that also explained a lot of the background information. I also suggest everyone goes to the FAQ section on the City of Oakland's website. That should help explain some of the background. Zenny, with respect to the tax increment financing, because that our traditional tool of redevelopment is no longer available to cities, it's made this project much more complicated.
See, I want you to hear this, okay? Hold on a second. I want you to pay attention to what she's about to say next.
We are proposing to use a new tool called the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District in combination with a community financing district. These are relatively new tools that have not been used extensively, but they have been used somewhat, and that is what we're proposing to do. The full details, as well as additional analysis and economic projections, will be available as we move towards the development agreement, the DA, the binding agreement. And we are excited about ensuring that these are project generated revenues. These are revenues that, but for the project, the city would not have. And so we want to be clear, because people are talking a lot about what is the public investment. These are dollars generated by the project itself. And these tools, like an enhanced infrastructure financing district, were designed to allow cities to bond against these revenues so that we can make the improvements that will create much larger revenues for years to come that will benefit Oakland and the whole region.
Good. I'm going to come back to you, Zenny, and read a few questions before that. One here, Mayor, from Keith Burbank at Bay City News.
Okay, so and my point is she was going to come back to me, and I'm gonna. And my point, let me see. I think this is right here. All right, we already got to that one. Anyway, but I think you get the idea. She said it was new. All right, but tax increment financing is not new to me. All right. and this is where the city got into trouble. First of all, take note of when that was done. That was July 21st of 2021. Okay? And SB 293 Skinner was signed into law October 11th of 2019. So we were already 2021, 2020, 2019, 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021. We were already about a year and a half late from the point at which I did the first tax increment financing calculations that started this thing. That was 2017. And I presented them the day of Kabul in preparation for our April 4th, 2017, 4:00 in the afternoon phone conversation. Because during that conversation, Dave swore up and down that you couldn't use public money. And I said you could, and I discussed SB 628 deal, which then it existed before Dave worked with the city and State Senator Nancy Skinner to form SB 293 Skinner. That was 2018, then 2019. Okay. So I'm the person who made the calculations because I learned how to do that way back in the late 80s. And I kept doing it. I did it to help Robert Bob regarding a new ballpark in downtown. I've done it as a tool to analyze ideas I had when Mark Davis back in 2016 said, Zinni, you come up with a stadium plan. Remember that? So what I learned back then, I have used in many different ways as consultant and vlogger and blogger through the years. Oh, and even columnist for the Montclarian from 1993 to 96. All right. It's a long time added up. I have a lot of tax increment financing spreadsheets I've done on a bunch of computers that I still have at home, old computers, older ones, So I know this pretty well. Okay. And yet, because Libby decided to go with her way, with her people that she knew, but she didn't know that they didn't know, rather than go with the guy that she's known for 32 years who's done this stuff all the time, because she obviously wasn't paying attention to what I was doing all those years, including trying to bring Super Bowl to Oakland, she got what she got. The blind leading the blind by her own admission, right there, and you heard it. We didn't have our best people at the table, and we're not going to under Mayor-elect Tao either, because the way the city has this idea, it's too politicized. We don't have a council manager form of government. We don't have a city manager running things, where we have a more of a professional approach. We have an unprofessional approach. And so that's why we're getting what we're getting. We have an unprofessional approach. All right. So I wanted to present that to you and then explain to you that what Betsy Lake presented was a reaction document. It was not an economic analysis at all. It left out a lot about the deal and the project. You can't tell at all where it's at. It presented a discussion of IFDs, which Betsy Lake is right to say, hey, look, that shouldn't be mentioned, but she didn't explain where we were in terms of the process of using enhanced infrastructure financing districts, let alone what they are versus what IFDs are. I can go on and on and on. It was purely reactive. And the latest example of how over politicized this is, where someone has to write a reactive document that produces more problems because it is precisely that. It is not an update document. It is not a planning document. That's awful stuff. There's an old saying that Union Rep Alberto Roca used to say to me every time he came to visit my office in City Hall when I represented Oakland Mayor Lee Harris. He'd say, Zinni, if you like what you're getting, Keep on doing what you're doing. I ask the City of Oakland this: do you like what you're getting? And if you don't, then why do you keep doing what you're doing? Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com. Good night. That is this broadcast. Oh, and by the way, we have a membership. Did I tell you that? Hold on. We've got a new, that's right. We've got a new membership section here. I'm going to show it to you right here. Boom. And then I'm going to go here and see if I can enlarge this. Zoom in and then zoom in. And then if you come, there's this little button that says join right here. See if you press it. Boom. See how it opens up like that? It says join this channel. It's just $2.99 a month. Reoccurring payment. You can cancel anytime. All right. Okay. If you join, hit join. All right. Like that. Okay. Pay and all that. Okay. Monthly charge. All right. And if you do that, what you get is some pretty cool stuff. Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Excuse me. What you'll get are the different levels of membership. The most expensive one is the fan board, the Zenny62 fan board, or fan club board, excuse me. And there you'll enjoy private live streams of special guests. Only you will meet them. The ability to enjoy private updates and also request special coverage and special live streams, among others. I'm deep in the throes of planning the large amount of goodies that will be part of our membership. But hey, the base is $2.99 to join. Join it. It's worth it. All right. So again, just go to the front of Zenny62 YouTube. That's all you got to do. And then go over and click join. Okay. Join our club. Love to have you. I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. All right. See y'all later. Bye.